5th of February is quite special. If you cast your mind back to 2 years ago precisely, that was the time Nigerians came to cast their votes. Which side of the divide were you on? Were you batified? Were you articulated? Or were you obedient? For a presidential race, it was quite surprising that we saw a 3-horse race as opposed to the usual 2-horse race of 2 political parties dominating at the polls. As the political atmosphere begins to get charged for 2027, Nigerians are wondering, are we going to see a credible opposition? Are we going to have 3 parties again, or are we going to see a coming together of the opposition to take out the ruling party? And when we do look at the past elections, there have been gains. There's the belief that if the youth, which has the most numbers, come together to cast their votes, they could have their voices heard. But still, is that enough? Do we need to be doing more as the build-up of the elections begins in 2027? Joining us for what promises to be a very engaging conversation is a broadcaster and social worker in the person of Emmanuel Gabari. Welcome to Rubbin'minds.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Glad you accepted our invitation. And seated next to him is lawyer and policy consultant Timi Olagunju. Welcome to Rubbin'minds.
Thank you for having us, Isabel.
So let's look at the 2027 elections. There's a sense that APC has been doing well in the off-cycle elections. They've been winning, they've been clearing the polls. And some Nigerians of the opinion that, look, Emilokon is going to carry on to 2027. Like, once he's done his 4 years, he's going to do his next 4 years. And then afterwards, we can then begin to think about having a new party or maybe having a new president. Do you agree? And I'll start with you, Timi.
Well, interestingly, it's a very deep question you asked. Actually, in a democracy, you should expect that, the evidence of results will be the basis upon which, the polls or the results of the polls are determined. As you can see, the evidence of the weight of the economy is hitting hard on Nigerians. And Nigerians are really, kind of questioning whether the current leadership has the mettle to deliver on the dividends of democracy. However, when it also comes to the way democracy is structured politically in this part of the world, you'd agree with me that there's a lot of work to be done. And considering the state of our democracy or elections, I think our focus really going forward will not really be the question of whether, the political machinery can deliver 2027 for the current president, but much more, how do we ensure that the electoral system reflects the reward for the dividends of democracy or the lashes for not providing that dividend? So I think that should be my take there.
Emmanuel, I'd like you to weigh in.
Yes, if you also study the political terrain, you realize, like you said, the Emilokon syndrome and all of that. Here we have a 3-stooled scenario, so to say. But if you have also followed closely, you will find that is obviously just the take a bow thing that happens when it comes to elections, especially with the ruling party. It happened in PDP, and it's no news, so to say, in the APC. Even when we leave from the presidential angle, even into the states, we've seen how state machineries have always used their political weight, the power weight, the money and all of that to instill it. So it's always like they say, oh, okay, let's leave it. And maybe we've even had instances, even after the elections of last year, where people just said, okay, you know what, oppositions, just wait till 2031. it might come as a derogatory thing, but for people who have also studied and followed elections and seen that sometimes it's not even about what you do anymore, it's how you are able to wield power, how you have enough money, enough resources in your hands. Also knowing that Nigeria is still playing the game of money politics, Your friend might be in one party today and they swing where the money leads, and they tell you who political whatever helped, and they are using the poverty issue to also tie it down. So when they know they have more money, they could go to sleep and say, of course, we have what it takes to get what you want. It's like a lady who wants to go shopping. Once you know a night before you're shopping that, of course, you have some money in your credit card, you feel relaxed. Even when you get to the shop, it has increased. You know you have enough to take care of it.
Yeah. Like, what I get from the two of you is a sense of political apathy, right? Nigerians have questions. Nigerians want to judge this administration based on the realities, whether it's economically, politically, socially. But again, there's that sense from Nigerians that, okay, if I go and cast my vote, am I safe? We did see pockets of violence. If I go and cast my vote, is it going to really count? What has this administration done to allay such fears and to protect the integrity of the ballot? I mean, we're looking at using technology now to be able to ensure that the results are not compromised from the polls to the collation center, Timmy.
Well, interestingly, I don't see much being done, but I hope that we still have a long road before the 2027 elections. And, I hope, which is the hope of many persons that I've had the privilege to converse with, that we take the challenges of the elections. For example, the challenges of people not easily getting their voters card, across to them. That's a huge challenge. And there are ways in which these challenges have been solved globally. And we take global best practice to solve those problems. For instance, the challenge of collation center. From the last election, we observed situations where the votes were counted, people took records, and then by the time they move to the collation center, some magical occurrences kind of happen. And in those circumstances, you can get the media more involved, get the media to have access into the collation centers, such that you can broadcast what is happening. You saw what happened with the last US elections, where, what was happening right in collation centers where, voting was made public. So I think media's involvement, because you cannot have a lot happen in darkness, right? It's when there's light that solve major problems. And so I think there needs to be light, which is the media involvement in being able to access collation centers, as well as also we saw the issue of the transmission from collation centers even to the center, where people gave certain results that were even different from what has been collated. So why not we work on something that would ensure that from collation centers there is a live broadcast of these things? Apparently, if INEC has nothing to hide, it should get the media, which is the fourth leg of the stool. You have the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. The fourth leg of the stool being part of that process significantly than what it used to be.
I'd like to come back to the issue of the opposition, right? We've been talking about this three-legged stool, three-party, three-horse race. And if you look at the Labour Party, they went in quite strong. They did well, and they actually won some seats. But over time, we've seen some cross-carpeting, some, jumping across party lines. What message does that send to the electorate when it comes to voting for an opposition party that is not one of the two parties?
So it still boils down to saying there's a whole lot of work to be done when it comes to opposition. I think where they missed it also is not realizing the big elephant in the room. I mean, when you know your strength and you know your weakness and you know who you're fighting against, you will, it's not about faith now. You will recognize and want to get more warriors to join you in your fight. I think that's one of the I wouldn't say mistake, because every party might have their structures or their beliefs and all of that. But when you know you are working with a ruling party already that has finance to their advantage, that has and still is having more seats to their advantage, that has the authority, the institutions, so to say, that they may sound independent but not look independent, and it could sway at any time. The best you could have done is to get more force. You don't fight a Goliath claiming you are a David, because it doesn't happen in the forefront, in the war front. And so I'm also wishing that they could leverage on that, because come to think of it as well, during the Jonathan crossover to Buhari time and all of that, while that could hold ground was, they realized as well that PDP was really, really tough. And so what can we do? They went back, brought in other parties, so the votes will not be scattered. I think what LP didn't realize is to also say, let's get other people to us, because PDP was already a stronghold, LP was doing theirs, and APC would just sit down and laugh because the votes were already watered. At some point, people were saying, okay, why don't we do a merger? Both parties come together, find your VP, get this, just to strategize and build more force. But I think maybe selfishness came into it and all of that. But they should have also known that they are fighting with a big party already existing. And then another point that we are also not realizing is from the party primaries. These things come from the party primaries. And even when we talk about vote buying and all of that, it started there, because good candidates who may not have the money power are automatically already removed from the race, because the party also, even from experience and all the times we've analyzed, the party will always tilt towards bringing their candidate who has also watered grounds and all of that. And so that also brings the issue of, even when someone is good, it's not enough. Even when you have ideologies of good things for the country, it's not enough, because even from your party, you could just be disenfranchised because you don't have that party will. So finance still plays a long role. People only are looking at the grassroots money politics of having 5,000 naira and go away. What about the party where good candidates that would have restored Nigeria into its rightful place, they are missed out because they don't have money?
I'm glad you brought that point up, because when Nigerians go to the polls, they are left to choose from who the primaries have produced as candidates. So if you're looking to maybe vote for a woman, for example, if you don't have a female candidate, you cannot vote. So my question to you, Timi, has to do with the credibility of the elections. And that starts with the primaries. That starts with correcting some of the ills and the mistakes that were made. You already gave an example of the role the media can play in making such corrections. By your assumptions, by your evaluations, I beg your pardon, is this administration doing enough to send a signal to say, look, Nigerians, come to the polls because your vote will count? And we're doing that by enshrining that transparency and that authority of INEC.
I would say that the current administration is not doing enough. Or most likely, when you have conversations, across board, you take a public opinion. In fact, it's most likely perceived that they're not doing anything at all. Because one of the key symbols of the electoral body is the head of the electoral body. And so I think it would be nice for INEC to take a poll and see how much trust people have on the head of that body. You'll be shocked at the perception, across whether the northeast or north, south, or the southwest or the, north central. You'll be shocked at the perception that they have. And as a consequence of that, I think the leadership, one of the first things that the government can do is to look at to what extent there is trust on the leadership of INEC. That's where the first start will come from. And if there is a question of trust, who can be trusted to take on that leadership? That's a key question. Another thing is, there's always conversation about the fact that money politics and politics, democracy is expensive everywhere in the world. Interestingly, even in the U.S. elections, they spend humongous amounts, and shockingly, the point there is, or the difference there is, that the money for most elections in emerged or advanced democracies is that the money comes from the people. Yeah. Whereas in our own case, the monies come from the politician. So that mindset shift is important, that people realize that a politician who you demand money from gets into office. Common sense is not common sense. If I gave you 1,000, right, to be able to do ABC, and I'm able to do ABC, first thing I do is to want to recoup, right? And so that mindset that we get things from politicians before they get into office is wrong. And that's why I'm excited about the last election, which was much more about, people donating towards a particular candidate, understanding the fact that, you see, this leadership thing is about us. It affects your death, your birth is determined by government. If government says you are not born, you are not born. Even though you were born as a human being, once they don't issue you a birth certificate, you're not born. If government says you're not a citizen of a country, you're not a citizen. Who issues you your international passport? The government. So everything falls and rises within the earth on governance and government. And that mentality, that shift, is very important, I think.
Emmanuel, there's a lot that's been said about what government should be doing, what this administration should be doing, what INEC should be doing. But the question is, what should the population be doing? What should the electorate be doing? How can they begin to use their electoral power now in 2027, in 2025 against 2027 elections? Is it just about registering for your PVC, or can more be done to ensure that we have higher numbers at the polls, higher numbers even at the primaries, for example?
Sadly, I think the electorate still don't realize the strong power that they wield, so to say. You still hear issues where who go win. You still hear issues where I believe politics now for the big people and all of that. How often have electorates realized that they could call back, their representatives when issues like this happen? I know it's a bit cumbersome. Of course, a legal person is here. I know it's a bit cumbersome to do, but have they tried? That's another thing. And when we also say, I think the yardstick to check whether a leader is doing well or not is also being compromised by the electorate. Because sometimes when I go to the field and I ask, so how do you even know a politician or a leader who has performed well with a scorecard? Is it the one who has been able to share grinding machine or give Okada to the youth? Or is it the one who have been able to bring infrastructure, long-term benefits, make sure that it's been industrialized, make sure that there are organizations or things, development in the state? Because you find the electorate just being comfortable with peanuts, come in and you find some of them come and tell the politician, oh, my daughter is wedding next week, we don't have food at home, and all of that. And for the politicians who are not able to do these things, they might be termed from the electorate side that they are not working, and they are not also looking at, are you holding these politicians accountable to say, after 4 years, can we come back to the constituency and see that there are good roads, there are market squares, there are hospitals that are working, our children's life have been improved? Because these are two things that even when you talk with the politicians, they will tell you, we got elected by them. These are the things they say they want. So
there's that responsibility of the people to hold the leaders accountable. Timmy, what needs to be done to get that political atmosphere charged? We didn't need the government to create articulated, ratified, obedient people on their own, organize themselves. We saw it online, social media. We saw it offline. People having that interest, believing that somehow their votes counted, somehow whatever they came out to say was actually going to be listened to. We're not seeing that in 2025, and it's never too early. So what needs to be done that you are as charged, I'm as charged, everyone watching is as charged?
You know, the question you raised is quite a fundamental point, and I'll take on my brother's three-legged stool. The first tool, basically, is that we understand that it is, first rule, about who is being presented to the electorate, who is on the ballot. You remember the last election, there was a lot of charge amongst young people that I don't know who gave the young people that were in that side a name called obedient. I don't know how that name came on, but you know, there was a charge. There was an increased enthusiasm to come out and, you know, be politically involved. So the logic first is that the kind of candidates that political parties present need to be the candidates that reflect the aspirations of the people. Even the political parties themselves, do they hold, you know, qualitative or quantitative analysis to determine what are the aspirations of the people before we present a candidate? Very important. I think the political parties should take this and go home with it. That's the first point. Second point to it, which is the other leg, is that candidates who think they can provide some leadership should step out and provide themselves to, like, you know, some of the candidates in the last elections. And this is why. Sometimes politics is not even only about winning elections. Sometimes politics is also about changing the atmosphere and influencing the conversations that happen. A lot of things came on board. People started to see political office holders from a different point of view. There was an increased civic engagement, and that is also important. Then the third and last leg is something that I have tried. You know, so in Youth in Motion, which is an organization I founded, we took secondary school kids from public school, because I'm a product of public school, so I'm very passionate about it, in Oyo State in Ibadan. And each year, we take them to the House of Assembly to observe parliamentary sittings and teach them about their rights and things like that. Shockingly, we started as far back as 2017. As at this particular moment, you'll be shocked at the impact that has had on the kids that have had the privilege in SS1, SS2 to be part of it. We need to institutionalize opportunities for young people across Nigeria to understand governance and what it is practically. Evidence is the end of argument.
Thank you very much, Timi Olagunju and Emmanuel Gabari. That's all we can take on this segment.
Thank you for having us.
We'll go.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time.